My name is Kenneth Alemán, and today I will talk about Freinet and his contributions to pedagogy and education. Celestine Freinet was born on October 15 in 1896 in Gars, France. Between 1913 and 1919, he attended a teacher training college in Nice and lived his education as something boring because for him school was a place separate from the outside world. In 1920, he started as a teacher in a school in the Maritime Alps in southern France. And it was during this period that he began his work as a pedagogical activist with his different proposals, which I will talk about later. Freinet became aware of the problems of education in the 1920s and tried to find a solution to them, which he believed would be necessary for the training of children in an environment in which the children taught in life are the principal, which means that his pedagogy is mainly based on the child's perspective actively, but it doesn't mean that the teacher don't play any role here, but his contribution is much reduced compared to the conventional form that we are familiar with. Freinet pedagogy is centered only on the student, but we must take into account that it also emphasizes the teacher, the tools, and the classroom. The role of the teacher is very important and is the main key in the education of the learners, but in a passive form. For Freinet, a teacher must fulfill several propositions in the classroom. This pedagogy considers individual learning rhythms. That is why children use tools that Freinet provides. This includes that the teacher must know their students and their growing and development in a school environment. Therefore, the teacher must know their necessities so he can help them with activities that are to the enjoyment. A further important point is the manner in which professor displays their authority to a student. Freinet claims that teachers should not emphasize too much on structuring the child, but have the choice to listen to what each learner has to say in order to enter into an atmosphere of trust and to create learning interest in specific topics and promote free speech. Freinet also argued that teachers should cooperate in students' learning and decision making and not control what the students should do and learn. He states that for a better education, children must be completely free from the authority of their parents in order to be successful in their learning. From the beginning of his professional life, his main interest has always been to improve the social and cultural quality of the working class. His greatest pedagogical contribution is constituted by his vision of the children, work, and society as inseparable and complementary elements in the educational context, which means that each one acts together and in the end everything helps to create an oral environment that works properly. So today the teacher who is inclined to put ideas of the teacher Freinet into practice emphasize the education of values such as democracy, freedom of expression, communication, commitment, responsibility, and teamwork, which are mainly the values that Freinet tried to demonstrate in his pedagogy. Currently, The Freinet's pedagogy is still strong to seated since it ranges from kindergarten to university and adult education. Freinet was a village teacher, and that allowed him to know in his environment and that consisted of spaces and social media never being for any person, loneliness and misunderstanding and isolation. That is due to these problems that he faced in his childhood and adolescence. He was able to raise awareness and reflect for himself and what was wrong and what he could improve them. He was also able to learn from his people with contact with nature and from the fight against people. Freinet doesn't start from a great pedagogical theorization, but from the attempt to give valid practical answers to the multiple problems that his daily activity posed, as I mentioned. This is what makes his pedagogy loaded with strategies, techniques, and resources. This also makes it realistic and practical for all those who want to use it. For Freinet, the school is a people's school with inner democracy of popular interest and without external imposition. This means that only what occurs inside a classroom matters and that it looks to eliminate everything that has a background or of prior knowledge or ideology. Freinet has complete confidence in the nature of children and in their potential and believes that children are the principal object of education. He insisted on putting into practice an active pedagogy that should also be popular because it will be linked both to the environment in which works and this one is a class audience and the interest for the children. It is necessary to find the right material to carry out these pedagogies, since Freinet's proposal is not only focused on giving an active role to the children, but also on providing a living school in which all the people around them participate as well as the space where this is carried out. Freinet active schools start from the children's activity closely linked to the environment in the case of the classroom or the child with their needs. He, with his spontaneous proposals from the center of the educational process and the basis of the popular education method. Thus, it can be corroborated what I mentioned that the center of learning in the education is not the teacher, but it is the learner. Freinet is the main author who enhanced the constructive thinking. This thinking has been supported by the epistemological, psychological contributions and the liberal anti-authoritarian approaches produced by the social science and the new educational theories. It focuses on the student with a more participatory, dynamic, and practical role to obtain learning skills and aptitudes. And here is one quote that Freinet wrote to sustain the idea of constructive thinking that says, hence, the basis of school activities is individual, or the teamwork of affinities always focused on the student. This means that the interest is only relevant to individual and team activities such as lectures, presentations, conferences, or any other activity, because the topics of these can be chosen by themselves depending on what they are interested in and know about, helping them to understand the subject better or to know further about it. This assumes that regardless how significant the material to be learned is, the learner's intention is only to learning by heart. The process of learning and the result will be spontaneous, which means that the student will forget it eventually. But if the student is committed to learning, the process of learning and the result will be meaningless if the material doesn't relate to his previous ideas. Interest is another important concept in Freinet's pedagogy. And this can cause some confusion and make you think about Freinet's pedagogy, even question it. Freinet claims that the school activities should be motivated by the interest and needs of the children, and therefore the work should be considered by them as useful tasks to develop their interest and keep it alive. Freinet seeks the most appreciated strategies for children to feel the need and important individual and social of what they do. This made me think that if students don't have interest or on learning something that is strictly mandatory to learn, and they are not going to do it according to Freinet, then it means that students will only learn what seems useful to them, and in an extreme cases, easy to understand and perform, and that the teacher's work will be limited to helping them advance, since children will not want to learn beyond what is planned or interesting. I analyzed this after reading one of Freinet's most famous phrases, which says, "Give children the freedom to choose their work, to decide the timing and pace of this work, and everything will have changed." Freinet pedagogy undoubtedly works because of the great impact it has on education to these days. Yet, it is difficult to think of Freinet's pedagogy as useful when learning a second language. We must consider that when learning a second language, the student must have at least one person who transmits the second language, whether it's a teacher, a mother, or even a native or non-native speaker. However, Freinet's pedagogy is almost autonomous, so it would not be the best choice for a second language learner. Of course, many students learn a second language on their own, but generally speaking, in public education, elementary and high school students see learning English as a school subject and not as a tool for learning a second language. Freinet states that a good teacher speaks less and acts more. So it is more than evident that in order to achieve all that Freinet proposes in his pedagogy, the teacher must change totally. This means that the teacher must modify his attitudes in the classroom so that the student's role is more active and entirely different from the one applied in traditional pedagogy. Now, I'm talking about what Freinet proposes. The basic and general principle in his pedagogical system. The fundamental principles that he mentioned are expression, communication, creation, experimental trial, cooperative and participatory life, and school-life relationship. Expression, communication, and creation are essentially priority functions of the individual that permit the child to build himself as a person, a critical and creative thinker in his surroundings. Freinet claims that knowledge cannot be transferred from the professor who knows to the students who don't know. He says that children learn other knowledge from what they know and have in the same way that he applies a searching method. Cooperative and participatory life. Here, the student learns to perform practical and written school tasks by helping others in teamwork. This creates a sense of responsibility. And finally, school life relationship. As Freinet says, the teacher starts with the observation of everyday life because there is a strong relationship in what happens daily outside the classroom. When it is observed, leads to the reflection of different classes such as history, math, science, art, geography, etc. Freinet established his pedagogy under functions that take place inside the classroom. He noticed that children come to school with their own life experiences, knowledge, and questions and curiosities. Children look with their peers for answers to these questions, outside and inside the classroom, with the ways of communication that they already know. Children will develop their personality to the fullest in a society that serves them, in which they also serve. This means that they are going to be informed people to be part of a society in which they are already part, but in a less abusive way. The children will develop their personality with the help of everyone. The teachers, for their part, will focus on the health of the individual progress of the learners and that they are on the correct path in their learning, in the creative and visual abilities of the learner, in the full potential to perform the activities in class, in the richness of the learning environment, in the materials and techniques that will allow a neutral, lively, and complete education. In conclusion, Freinet brings a lot to pedagogy thanks to his work inside and outside the classroom. All the techniques are the basis on which active teaching was developed, which mentions that the student should be in a constant activity, but also the purpose of these techniques is that the students get a benefit from each activity, develop their motor skills, personality, and their knowledge in any subject. So this is it. I hope you like it, and thanks for watching.